We're joined now by Democratic Congressman from Maryland, Jamie Raskin. He served alongside Cummings on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee. He also from the state of Maryland. Congressman, thanks so much for taking the time this morning. And let me just begin with your thoughts on the passing of Congressman Cummings. It strikes me that he was a personification of the American dream, the son of sharecroppers who rose to be chairman of one of the most powerful committees in Washington.
It's hard to measure the enormity of our loss, Jim. Elijah was the favorite son of Maryland. He's been the moral center of the Democratic caucus, and he's someone who always calls us back to thinking about the next generations, about future generations, and the kids who are around us. I think about how in our Oversight Committee, almost every day he would break up partisan food fights and say, now listen up, here's what we're going to do. Listen up, here's what we're going to do. And he would refocus everyone on the task at hand, and that always had a moral premise and a moral core to it. So the reason why he made every possible effort to reach across the aisle and always to be bringing people in is that he understood that politics and government have got to be about service to the people, not about gamesmanship and trickery and strategic mischief and game playing. It's got to be about serving the people.
Yeah, well, let's hope that drive doesn't die with him. Let me ask you about the impact. He sparred with this president. He chaired a committee with enormous influence over the investigations of this president. He's now gone. What impact does his passing have on these ongoing investigations, including the impeachment inquiry?
Well, the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Intelligence Committee, and our Oversight Committee are also working with the Judiciary Committee. So the good news is that we have a very strong collection of chairs and subcommittee chairs and members working together. But what Elijah gave us was this moral resonance and texture to everything that we did. It's easy to get seduced into the idea that it's just about point scoring and game playing and so on. And Elijah always wanted us to keep our eyes on the prize. This is about the government of the United States. What will the government be doing? Will it be serving young people? Will it be trying to lower prescription drug prices, which was a cause so close to his heart? It was the very first hearing that we did in the Oversight Committee with Elijah Cummings. He brought in people who use insulin every day and couldn't afford it and were rationing their own insulin. So he always tried to view things from the perspective of the vulnerable and the outsider. I see two kinds of politicians in Washington. One are power politicians, and another type is justice politicians. And Elijah Cummings was the quintessential justice politician. It was all about justice and serving the people.
I'm sure that he would be honored by those words. I want to ask you now about events on Capitol Hill today. It's our understanding that Gordon Sondland, the current ambassador to the EU, has arrived on Capitol Hill for his testimony. Of course, key question to him is what was the substance of the administration's interactions with Ukraine? Specifically, was pressure applied, leverage, military aid to get them to investigate the Bidens? As you know, when he was asked that very question by Bill Carter, a senior U.S. diplomat there who had that very concern, he had a pause, went to the president. President told him there was no quid pro quo, and he went back and delivered that message. Is that a satisfying answer to you?
Well, it obviously raises a number of profound questions that I think the ambassador will be asked. What we're doing right now is we're putting together a lot of different details that are giving us a composite portrait of what happened. But right now, pretty much everything that the whistleblower put in the complaint has been corroborated by objective evidence. The contemporaneous memorandum that was written about the telephone call gives us a lot of detail. The fact that the military assistance that we voted for Ukraine, our besieged ally resisting Russian aggression, was held up in the process of trying to extract this promise that there would be investigators unleashed on the Bidens.
Well, to be clear, it's shown that that aid was held up. It is not, at least, and granted, we weren't in the room for these depositions, for this testimony, but it has not proven, it seems, yet that there was an explicit quid pro quo. And I wonder, from your perspective, do you have enough or close to enough for an article of impeachment on abuse of power by this president?
Well, of course, we don't need to have an explicit quid pro quo. This is not a bribery trial we're involved in. It seems clear enough, overwhelmingly clear, that the president used the military and national security machinery of the United States government along with the private shadow foreign policy conducted by Rudy Giuliani to try to extract from a foreign government a promise to go after a political rival. That's simply unprecedented in U.S. history, and it's a kind of shakedown we've never seen before in the conduct of U.S. foreign policy. It's a sellout of our basic principles, and they proceeded to try to cover the whole thing up. Having said that, there's a lot of interest in exactly how explicit this arrangement was, and I think that those are the kinds of details that are being filled in by the parade of witnesses that have come in. And I got to tell you, over the last several days, we've had some very honorable public servants and foreign service professionals come in to talk about what they've seen.
And notably, in defiance of what was a White House attempt to keep them from testifying. I should note that we just showed pictures, as you were speaking there, of Gordon Sondland arriving. He is now there on the Hill to begin his testimony. Just quickly before we go, because as you know, yes, these witnesses are testifying, but many of the documents, communications, text messages, etc., emails that you've demanded have been blocked. Can you build the case credibly if the White House continues to stonewall on those materials?
Well, at this point, all of the evidence points towards the culpability of the president. It is true that they are trying to block the witnesses unsuccessfully. They're trying to block the release of the documents to the committees. But ask yourself this, and this is what America is asking: what are they hiding? Why would they be trying to stop us from getting all this information if it was a perfect phone call and a perfect operation and they had nothing to hide? It doesn't make any sense. So Congress is on the side of getting the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Whatever evidence they've got, they should bring forward to us, and they should stop fighting our efforts to obtain this, because it is our power and it is our right to receive all of these documents that we're asking for. And we are being confirmed by the courts in this effort. The courts are saying it is Congress's right to get these discovery materials.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, we appreciate you joining the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.